One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. What happens when two people who are obsessed with podcasting get together? Well, we geek out about podcasting. No, we don't just have this casual conversation that's like, so tell me a little bit about your day in the podcasting space. No, we go deep. We start talking about things that just get me so excited. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could literally talk about this stuff all the time because, y'all, I have found someone who is just as obsessed with podcasting as I am. And it's incredible. So today's guest is Ash Borland, who you will want to go follow on YouTube. You'll want to go subscribe to his podcast and just follow him in all the places because he is crushing it when it comes to sharing really valuable information about podcasting. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Ash. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, Profit Podcast listeners, I'm so excited I just love the fact that Ash is here today and we are chatting about podcasting, content creation, and all the things. And I just want to welcome you to the show and say, I'm so happy that we're new friends. I feel like we're BFFs, behind the scenes with content, and let's geek out about this stuff. And it's so fun to talk to you. So I'm glad that you're here today with us.
Oh, Crystal, I'm so excited. This has been in my diary. I even messaged you and said, it's not in my diary, and I'm worried because I didn't want to miss it. I'm so excited to chat to you. I love what you do. Your podcast has been accompanying me on dog walks every single day since we've spoken. I've just been going back through your stuff. So I'm so excited to speak to you today.
Yes, this is going to be fun. So I know that you have an agency and you do podcast and content creation and YouTube, but I want to know, tell us a little bit about your like origin story. I mean, did you grow up and you said, you know what, one day I want to be a content creator? I mean, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I have. I don't want to bore you too much with it because as I'll go deep on this. So I'll just kind of give you the kind of cliff notes. But my background, originally, I come from like a family of performers. So my grandmother was, a concert pianist. She played for the Queen. She played for everyone over here in the UK. My mum was a professional dancer. She had a dance school, and I, from a very young age, pretty much got straight into performing arts and um, did that as my career. I got into, I got scholarships. I did worked in the West End over here in London. It's like Broadway for the people over in the US, and did all of that. And from a very young age, all the way through. And then at about 21, 22, which is actually very old for performers and young for everybody else, I kind of just left the industry. I was kind of done with it. I didn't want to go into it anymore. And when I wanted to be quote unquote normal, and I wanted to go and get a normal job, and I got into real estate for what we call it estate agency here, but it's real estate. And kind of forgot this past that I had of this kind of very eccentric, center of attention, hold the stage type person, and just became a real estate agent. And just lost that, and I got into, anyway, fast forward through that, was doing quite well, never really understood why, but I was just doing okay and it was doing well. And I moved into mortgage brokering because that seemed like a really great thing to do, which is the dullest job you can ever possibly do in your life. And I got into this mortgage brokering, and one of the things I did, I was constantly listening to Gary V, which I love Gary V, and I was listening to Gary V all the time on my commute for years, and I never actioned anything. I was like, this guy really speaks a lot of sense, but I have no idea how to do this. Couldn't turn on a computer, didn't know how to do any creative stuff. I don't know what happened. I think it was something really random about like this idea of trying to generate leads. I just, one day, my wife is a performer as well, and she turned around to me and she said, you need to start making videos about buying houses and mortgaging and stuff. This was quite a while ago now. And I just set up in my old iPhone 5 one day and propped it up against my coffee mug before I went to the office and made a video, and everything changed. And it sounds so silly, but that one day, it was not one day, but it was a one day, and then the next day, and then the next day. And over a year period, I coined this term, which I love to use, which is visibility is more important than ability. And I started to realize that everyone thought I knew everything because I was talking about this stuff. And it was great, and it transformed my entire life. I started generating leads in the financial services space. But what I would refer to people, I used to be into fitness a lot, and like kind of gyms, and guys go to the gym because they want to impress women. But what actually happens is guys get lots of other guys asking them about how great they look and how do they, how do they work out what. So you get the wrong attention. And that's kind of what happened as with my video content. More brokers were getting in touch with me going, how are you doing this? And what I started to realize was I'd packed away all this creative kind of skills, and I kept going, well, I don't really know how to do it. I don't know how to do this. And there was a moment about a year in where I always call it like stepping into the superhero suit, which is like, there's this last scene in Smallville years ago I used to love, when he can only come Superman when he fully admits that he can fly, and that's what stops him. And I had this feeling where I was just like, well, of course I'm good at this. Like, this is what I've done my entire life. And I hadn't thought, I'd never admitted that to myself. And when I did, everything changed. I left the mortgage industry. I started consulting mortgage firms here in the UK. And part of that the whole thing with this kind of started as a consultant was I got interviewed on a podcast, and it kickstarted that whole consultancy business. I loved it. I was dyslexic, loved this idea of podcasting, and that was it. I got into podcasting, content creation, and here I am now. I mean, there's a lot between that point, and we're going to unpack it, I'm sure, here, but it kind of felt like a full circle. It was this idea of like, I hid away from it for years, didn't want to do it, but actually it was my terms, perfect storm, the stars aligned, and I absolutely love it. And being around people like you, meeting great creators. I didn't really like that performer world because it was quite catty and quite, but here in the creative space, the digital creative space, everyone is just amazing. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
This is so good. And it's so funny. Like for anybody that if you're not watching the video, if you haven't seen Ash's setup and everything, I cannot imagine you as a mortgage broker. Like that's all I kept thinking the whole time. Cause you have this super awesome like backdrop and you have like your professional studio and everything. And I'm just imagining, I'm like, what in the world did you look like? Like, what was this life like before content creation? And I totally agree. I think that you've stepped into your zone of genius with what you're doing today. So you are on the right path. You are definitely on the right path.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, no, it was, yeah, I was definitely not yeah, not like this, not at all. Like I'm, bearded, tattooed, very eccentric guy. Like I wasn't like that at all. So yeah.
Well, but it's really refreshing to hear that, you had this for someone that could look at you and like you have this super professional setup and, you're cranking out all this content that's super helpful. But like you said, you didn't know what you were doing. You were like, I don't know how to do any of these things, but you knew that innately, like in who you are as a person, you're a performer or you're able to get up in front of an audience, get behind the camera and speak naturally. And I think that a lot of people don't do that. They don't take like I was a cheerleader. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I was a cheerleader like from the age of 4. And so when people say, "Doesn't that terrify you to get out in front of people?" And I'm like, "Not really. I used to do it ever since I was a little
Yeah.
kid. It's what I knew." And it's how you develop these, feelings of confidence and being behind the camera and all the things. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought it was so funny. I'm like, "A mortgage broker. No, I can't see it. I can't see it."
Neither could I, neither could anybody else. I mean, do you know what that was? A little lesson to everyone there. Don't follow money. That was the
Oh
biggest
yeah.
lesson. That is to sum that one up. Don't follow money because money will take you to places where you are not suited.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Oh my gosh. So that's a little bit about like your content creation journey. Now I want to talk about because you had me on your podcast, which is so fun and where everything kind of stemmed from. Like we have this, really cool back and forth, DMs here and there, like, hey, you should go check this out. We're trying to connect people and network with one another. But I really like the idea of podcasting and YouTube like going together and I think that you're doing this really well. So, can you tell a little bit about why you want to be on a podcast and a YouTube or how you kind of got started with that?
Yeah, so I I started off in I say just podcasting, and I just did what I'm going to sound really bad with people. I don't mean this bad with the audio purists, the RSS feed only, and that's it. And that's, by the way, everyone is different for that. I'm from a different era of this idea of video content. I think content is content, and I got into podcasting by just podcasting, and that was great. And then I fell into the idea of live streaming. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. And what happened was really lucky enough and kind of rookie enough. I didn't really realize the kind of the genius that I was around at the time. But because I didn't know who they were, so I wasn't that bothered. I reached out. I stumbled onto YouTube and was like, okay, why we need to take this seriously? Anybody who wants to really be found has to be on YouTube because right now as a podcaster, discoverability is terrible. Social media is not good enough. There is only one place in my opinion. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stumble onto YouTube. I'm just going to have a look. I've never been on it, but I've got a channel, but like I'm just throwing rubbish up there. And I stumbled in a live stream by a creator called Nick Nimmin. And anyone who doesn't know Nick, you should check his stuff out. He's got about 850,000 subscribers now. And he was just, I was a bit like just kind of glued to this guy's live stream. It was a 4-hour live stream. I was building my son's cot at the time because he was about to be due. And I just literally was like stuck to this guy. Like I lived on everything he was saying. And what I realized was he then brought on 5 other people onto the show in this live stream that after 3 hours of him solo, which is intense, he does it every weekend. And then he bring on 5 or 6 other people. And I just kept looking at it thinking, when you like see something, I can imagine like the guy from McDonald's in the founder thing when he's like seeing something going, oh my gosh, can you believe what is this? Like, this is insane. I know other people had seen it, but I was glued and I just didn't know who he was. So I just reached out to him and a bit like, I just messaged him and said, look, I'm a podcaster. And now I didn't know it was a big deal. I said, look, I'm a podcaster. I got over here in the UK, my podcast is around 14th in the marketing charts. I would love to interview you because the stuff you were saying on that live, I know nothing about it, but this is amazing. And it got me in with this crowd of really, if you're into YouTube in any way, every single YouTuber that you know who's a YouTube coach, I ended up in their like WhatsApp group, and I didn't intend to be there. But but what happened then was people were asking me, these YouTubers didn't know much about podcasts, and they kept saying, well, Ash, what do you do? And I unintentionally started becoming their podcast person. And I was like, well, okay, that's weird. But what I did start to believe, and I really started to kind of, my gut kept telling me this when I started talking to them, as I was like, I think that podcasting is going to evolve, and I think YouTube is the place it's going to be. And I kept saying this to them, and they were like, because I kept seeing, you might see this, Crystal, with people, these YouTube creators are going, I do lots of live streams. I'm like, you're doing a podcast. That's what you're doing. You can rip the audio. Like Nick's now, his live streams are now audio. Like that's what he does. But at the time he wasn't. And it was this thing of like, no, that wasn't because of me, but it was one of those, like, he wasn't. And people, they couldn't seem to connect these dots. And I just seemed like when I was looking at it, I was like, this is exactly what it is. So I tried to work it out, see how it works. I'm still figuring it out. And that's how I came across your content, because I was looking at like solo podcasts and how can you utilize those on YouTube. But I'm getting some success with shorts. But I do think that YouTube has just hired their first executive to look at this space. I really do. And I'd bet my house on it. I'd remortgage my house and bet it. I do think they're going to come into this space strong. And I think video podcasting I think YouTube could conquer it because they have the audience there and they have the search. And I think if you're a podcaster, you should be serious with it. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do it because, Crystal, you're an amazing podcaster and you don't do it, but you have a strategy. But I think you people are missing a trick if you're just ignoring it. I think you should be seriously looking at YouTube as a podcaster.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And I do love, how you shared, because I gotta say, like, it takes a little bit of self-confidence to just reach out to people, especially even if you don't know who they are, that they're not really like that big of a deal, because that's how we got connected. Like, and I so appreciate you were just like, hey, love your content, like what you're doing, but you were very specific. So for anybody listening, this is the way for us to become friends, okay? Like you have to be very specific, not just say, hey, you do amazing things, now let me talk about myself. Because that is what a lot of people do, like to pitch themselves to be on a podcast or do a collaboration. Yeah. But what Ash did and what made me pay attention is he was very specific. It's like, hey, I love what you're doing on your YouTube channel, specifically the content about solo stuff. You said something like, I hadn't seen this before, or I really like this video. And that made me pay attention to what you had to say. And I was like, oh, who is this person? So I looked up what you did and I wanted to see what you were doing. And I was just like, man, he sounds like a great person to chat with. So I wanted to really point out what you did for us to kind of just be in contact, because I don't think a lot of people out there even think about that. I think they're looking at, like you said, the big channels and they're like, well, I want to get on those. But at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of power in speaking with people who are kind of either on your same level or talking about the same things, or even talking about things that you really want to know about. So I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to tell you do did a great job in doing that. I don't even know if that's even a conscious thing.
It is. It's lovely to hear. And it is a thing I've been told a few times. I had Owen Video, who is quite big in the YouTube space. He turned down, I reached out to him. Nice thing. The similar thing. And he came on the show and he said, I want to just shout out quickly. He said, the reason why I come on, now he turned me down. This is podcast life, isn't it? So your listeners will get this. And he turned me down. He said yes. I like WhatsApped him, or not WhatsApped him, like Instagram message DM'd him to a story, because it was like the best way to get into it. And it was like a Legend of Zelda thing. And I said, oh, this is great. And I said, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Would you like to come on? And he went, and he said, yeah, sure. Send it to my PA. Now we all know that means no. So I was like, yeah, sure. So I sent it to the PA, and then what happened was with the PA, and this is another way I find to get these bigger guests on, and these called like different people, just not bigger guests, just people who I think is valuable. I couldn't care less about the size, but like Owens, then I sent the PA the list, and she said, oh, he's booked out now for the next 6 months. So really, and I thought, I know. And I said, not a problem. Can we book him in after 6 months? Because I would, and she was like, oh no, well, I'll get back to you. And she didn't get back to me anyway. I just kept turning up to his live streams, and I knew this is where understanding of digital marketing, their live stream, they're multicasting, and they're multicasting to LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the places, YouTube. He's got a big YouTube channel, a big Facebook following, but nobody watches him on LinkedIn. So I just went onto LinkedIn, and I just kept saying, this is, and not just look at me, I was like, this is great, and getting involved. And it's really funny because he came on the show all of a sudden. About 3-4 weeks later, the PA messaged me and said, oh, he's had a cancellation, he can come on next week if you're around. And he came on the show, and he said, I just want to shout out. He said, I would never say this normally. He said, I get asked every single day. He said, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And I'll let her, because I pay her to deal with it. And he said, but the fact you kept showing up and actually caring about what I did made me research you. He said, and when I researched you, I was like, oh, this guy's actually legit. Like he's knows people, and he's connected, and it's all of this, and he's got good stuff. So follow up is very important. And being like, how many times people just reach out for just nothing. And that's with your content.
Right.
You also spur of the moment. I saw it. I loved it. I thought your video, and I shout out to this, your video was the best video I've seen on solo podcasting. And I am a solo podcaster. So I was like, yes. And I just, as soon as it was like impulse, I clicked on that photo. I went down to the thing and I was like, I've got it. And I just was like, I have to speak to this woman. I was like, I don't know anything else you do, but this is amazing. And then I started researching afterwards. But it was like, when a video makes you feel that kind of emotion, I think you have to do it.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. And I love this strategy so much because you do it well. And it was kind of like after we had our initial interview, I feel like I repaid the favor. Like I showed up to like one or two of your lives, and I was like, but to what you said, your point, it's not about just talking. It's not about, but if you go on someone's live stream and you add value, it's all about the value, not like, hey, I'm amazing. Look at me over here. Look at what I'm doing. Like you're just going to annoy the crap out of everybody. But if you go there and you're like, oh yeah, do you remember this? Or have you ever tried this strategy? Or asking questions that are kind of maybe some of those softball questions that people are like, hey, I know that your audience is going to probably be interested in this. And I also know that Ash knows the answer to this question. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. I don't know, maybe it's like an unspoken creator thing, but I think that the more we talk about it, it could be very helpful to other people, because now there's going to be people that hopefully will go, and everybody go subscribe to Ash's information. It's all going to be linked in the show notes, but definitely I think it's a way that we can help support each other. And what's so cool about the creator community, for sure.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Well, let's change directions, because you mentioned solo podcast, and I want to talk about your solo podcast journey, because this is where people get uncomfortable. And we're just going to talk about solo podcasting. It's an uncomfortable thing. It's not even for someone who, like you said, you have a performing background. You've been on stage, I'm sure, in front of hundreds of people, and it's still so awkward to be in a room by yourself with just a microphone or a camera. So let's talk about what that journey's looked like for you.
Terrible. It's I love it. I love solo podcasting now. It's one of my favorite things to do. But my gosh, it was not at the beginning. And my very first episode, again, a lot of it's not there anymore because of copyright. I did a silly thing, which was I didn't know. Again, you live and learn, and then you have to realize that. But the first episode was me. I had my headphones in from an iPhone, the old ones, and I have a beard, so it was scratching on my beard. It was terrible. And it was so awkward. And it was about 35 minutes long, of which 20 minutes of it I was telling you about, and it's like, just you wait, because what's coming today is going to be very good. But let me just tell you a little bit about me first, but trust me. And then what was coming was a blog that I found, and I was just reading it. It was terrible. It was terrible. And I actually listened to it a couple of months ago because it was on like listen notes or something. You know, when the ones they don't delete them for some reason, they just keep them. Everywhere else is there. And I was like, I can't believe that I did this. But I'm so glad I pushed through. But it is very awkward and it is very uncomfortable, I think, as a solo podcaster, because I think there's two types of people. It'd be interesting to hear your take. First one is people who are really uncomfortable, so they sound uncomfortable, and it's like, oh, this is painful to listen to, which is fine, by the way. You've got to keep pushing through. Or there's the other type of person, which was definitely me, thinks they're not uncomfortable to listen to, but they are, and so they're very overconfident, and actually there's no and so they're making a 40-minute podcast because they've got enough to say, and actually it probably could have been done in about 5 minutes. So yeah, it's not fun, but it is amazing now. Like, I love it. It's like a diary now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. And I love to hear your two different types, because both people are uncomfortable. In either scenario, they're uncomfortable. I feel like I would definitely fall into the second category, where it's kind of like that fake it till you make it, but then you're talking, and while you're talking, you have this loop in your head, like, what is the point of what is actually coming out of your mouth? Like, what are you trying to say? You're just speaking. You're talking to yourself. You're not making sense. Like, bring this home, like land the plane, because no one even knows what you're talking about anymore. So just, is there a way for you just to stop talking
I
and be
remember
done with it?
The first one, it was because I originally got in by personal brand consulting originally. And I'm like, this is the personal brand. It was called the Personal Branding Secrets Podcast. Did very well at the beginning, but I have no idea why, because the first episode, I'm like, I don't know anything about personal branding. Like, I'm supposed to be this thought leader. And because I'm nervous, I was like, I don't really know anything about it. Nothing at all. I'm going to bring you on this journey with me, which is fine. But I was pitching myself as the expert. I was saying to people, go and listen to the show if you want to work with me. The first thing I say in the first 5 minutes is, I don't really know what I'm talking about. So don't, like, it's not, yeah, but it's funny, but it does evolve. And I think pushing through those pain points, and that's what I said about I loved your video, was it was real. That was what I found. And I think this hopefully is, I think it might be why you made those videos, is solo podcasts are amazing. Like, amazing. And they're amazing for lead gen as businesses. They're amazing for content for YouTube, for example. They're amazing for everything. And but there was like no one talking about it. And so
Yeah.
like I had stumbled across, I think it was Rachel Peterson, and hers was very, very good. So I listened to that. I was like, and she was the first person I'd ever heard who'd done a solo podcast. And I was like, is this even a thing? Oh, okay. Then if this is a thing, then, and I ran up, it wasn't my first podcast, it was my second podcast. So I'd run up with this, and that came across because I was like, you might feel this. I was bringing guests on the show. This can sound awful. I was bringing people on the show because they were, and I knew more than they did. And I was like, this is really bad. Like, I don't really know, like, why am I not, and I'm not going to correct them, but I was like, I need to step in front of this. Why am I not doing it? And that was where the solo thing, I thought, I can't get people to interview me every week. So what do we do? So yeah, it's a brilliant tool, I think.
Yeah. And I think too that a lot of people that do, okay, so there's a comfortability in solo podcasting, and it takes you a second to get there. It's not even people that can talk on a stage in front of thousands of people, like, it takes a second to get there. And I think that we often use interviews as a crutch. Yes. Because we want to do it on our own, or we have those thoughts of, man, I could totally just run with this conversation by myself, but it's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be hard. Like, it's easy. Like what we're doing right now, what Ash and I are doing, I can see him, he can see me, we can read off of each other, and we're just talking, y'all. We're just having a conversation, like we're having coffee together, and it's easier. But whenever you're stepping behind the mic by yourself, like, it's just, there's all these feelings of like, oh, I can just stop whenever I want to. And so people will often stop and start. And then the editing process is a mess if you do that too. So it's just like, it's a lot more stressful until you can figure it out on your own. But I'm so glad that you said that you love it, and it's really powerful. Have you gotten any feedback from your audience? Like, do they like the way that you talk to them? Like it's more relatable, or do you teach? Like, tell me more about your solo style.
So what? Yeah, how it started. I then moved. I then started a whole new show, and what it was I had a guy come on the show, and he said, who's a podcaster here in the UK, and he said, you need to be careful interviewing too many people if you're trying to generate leads from this. He said, because you're spotlighting all these other people and you're not talking to them. So I was like, okay. So I went back to the drawing board and I set up a new show, and I didn't do any interviews. That's actually like, I just did literally a solo show, and I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go through the uncomfortable phase again, and I'm going to try it. It was weird because that's the one that put me in the charts over here. And that's the one, if I'm honest with you, this the kickstarted my entire career, because I just went back to my days as a mortgage broker making videos on that. That was literally what I thought. I've done this before. As my wife said, she said, you've done it before, you can do it again. And I loved it. And the people, and I built a really, I made some mistakes, and I'm sure we'll talk about those as we go through, but in regards to like community and building and stuff. But my audience, they were like soaking it like a sponge. They were literally like, and I'm very into psychology and structure. I'm very deep. I'm very into like deep level learning as opposed to just surface level. So I was like, well, this podcast it's going to get quite really deep into behavioral economics and things like that. And they just kept wanting more and more and more. I did it every day. I did it every single day, 7 days a week, and I would live stream it. So I would live stream it to all my platforms. And I did it for like a year, and it was amazing. Like, it was so good. But what I started to realize, I started to lean into, I got more confident that I was a performer. So I started being more better tonality and funny, and not so much like making silly noises in regards to like the way my voice was sounding. And then also I watched a lot, I loved a lot of YouTubers back in the day. And I was thinking, like, you've got to be, I remember as a performer, there was that idea of fully commit, if you're fully over the top. And I wanted to be this larger than life character, not false, just I'm an eccentric guy from a very weird upbringing. And so instead of, I wanted to show the world who that really was. And it worked, and it really worked. But then it was a little bit of success. I'm sure you'll know this, Crystal, a little bit of success is a bad thing, because then it muddied the waters again. And it's just a constant, I say to people all the time, it's just a constant repeat, recalibrate, get back. You think you've sorted it. You think everything's flying to the races. And just when, I remember someone says to me, just when you think you've sorted it, something comes along and knocks it out. So, but yeah, I definitely, the feedback was great. And then I started bringing guests on, and the feedback got bad again. They were like, no, we don't want the guests. We want you. And I was like, oh, well, I want the guest because I feel lonely. So what are we going to do? And that's where the show that I brought you on came in, because that came from more of a network. I wanted to meet people, and I wanted to show the people who are interested in seeing who these creators were outside of because I'm in the UK, they don't know half the people in the US, and the best ones are in the US. The best creators are in the US. So if I could create a show that could curate them, that's where that came from. But mostly from loneliness.
I love that you said that. That's so funny. But it's so interesting to hear, kind of how everything developed. And I totally agree. I think that there's a constant evolution of like, you get to this point and you're just like, you get to the top of one mountain, but really you're just at the bottom of the next mountain. And that's what's really cool about it. And I think that, for everybody that's listening, if you're just now starting on your journey and you're waiting to get your first 100 subscribers on YouTube or your first 10 listeners to your podcast, like, just remember that you're going to get to a point where you do reach your goals, and you have to start asking these questions of, what do I want versus what my audience wants? And how can you balance that? So I love that you said, I know y'all just want me, but I'm lonely over here, guys. I'm sick of talking to myself.
It's very true.
Awesome.
And it's very true. And I think your video I watched recently, and about the solo verse. I watched one today. It was solo verse interview shows, and you're saying you do the one you want. And I think it all works if you do it however you want it to do it. So I like that. But you do have to balance. You're very right. You have to balance this idea of, and I think this is a content creator. This is not just podcasting. This is YouTube, everything. You have to balance the idea of what do your audience want, because I think a big mistake I see loads of people making in when they're trying to come into content is that they think they know what the audience wants and they have no idea. And that's so you told me to stop, but that kind of is what I was saying to you about when I look at my stuff. I was like, that they want podcast content. They don't want me to talk about the psychology stuff anymore. But I think this is a problem that I see come up all the time. They're not listening. It's like niching. The people don't. and I said this on before, I was like, you don't pick a niche. The niche has already picked you. You just have to open your eyes to it. It's already there. And I think that's something that's that a lot of content creators are just handicapping themselves massively because they're not actually being self-aware.
Yeah, that's so good. I felt like that was like a mic drop moment. Like that's so good to hear that. Because actually, now that I think about it, so this is going to sound kind of like crazy woo-woo or whatever,
Love
but
it. Go for it.
I mean, I feel like I predestined for you and I to meet because it was by happenstance that I created the solo content. But as soon as I did, it started performing well.
Yeah.
And so I started creating more solo content. And just like you said, because I think you had said to me, no one's creating solo content. And that's exactly how I stumbled upon creating solo content specifically for my YouTube channel. My podcast listeners are like, what are you talking about? You don't talk about it a lot. Well, it's because what we've talked about, discoverability, it's a little bit different with podcast, but I create a lot of solo content on my YouTube channel because people are looking for it and my channel can rank for it because there's not a ton of videos out there. There's
You're
just
like
not.
the solo. If you type solo podcast, you are that's why I said about reaching out to you. You're the only one. You're the only one. Like I want to sneak in there over the next couple of years, but like you are the only one. You are the only one. Like and everything. It's amazing, and which you're serving a need. It's incredible. Like I think it's a massive, and it's not trying to big you up here, but it is that podcasts. I feel like podcasts, and I'm super passionate about podcasts, but the problem is everyone sees something like Joe Rogan and thinks that's the only thing, and it's not. And 99 times out of 100, not 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, people go into podcasting thinking that they can be Joe Rogan, it's going to transform their business, and it's not. It's not. But that solo podcast will. And that's the thing I was like, this is like, it's like the secret that no one's telling you. And so when I saw your video, it's incredible. And I think that your listeners should go, if they haven't, they should go and check out your YouTube stuff because it is brilliant. Like I was writing notes. I was getting so into, because I was just doing it from a video guy. I was listening to your stuff. I was like, this is epic. And I've took so much from you from last time we spoke. Like I don't actually do my solo podcast video anymore. I do it audio because it's easier. I can batch it. I was listening to you. I was like, you said you batch and you do one at the beginning and you do it all the way through. I was like, how smart, like so smart. So you're the best at it, in my opinion, definitely in this space.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll link to the videos that Ash is talking about because there are definitely, I have like a playlist for solo podcasters and you should absolutely go check it out because there are some mindset things that I talk about when it comes to solo, but like you were hitting on earlier, you don't know them until you do them. Like I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to be a podcaster because I have all this information. No, y'all, I made all the mistakes and I'm teaching you what not to do. I'm saying, please do not do this. But I want to go back to what you were hitting on earlier about kind of branding and community and how you can tie all of these together. So what does that look like? Like for your business, does each type of content serve a different audience? Or are you just trying to blend like all of your brand together? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have two I have two very strong separate niches, which to be completely honest with you has been a battle over the last maybe 3 months of being like, again, getting myself out of the way. So I got into this by doing personal branding. And I actually think my wife was one that said to me, I was like, I think actually that was a mistake. And the reason why that was a mistake is there's a great YouTuber called Ed Lawrence who runs the channel Film Booth. And I had him on the show. He's blowing up right now. And he said the big mistake people are making is they're trying to make themselves a brand when they aren't a brand right now. And he said, and the problem is, and I remember him saying it, he said, Ash, because everyone else had told me, name it after you, call it. And he said, and not just the podcast, I mean, everything. The podcast, not at all. I mean, don't do that. But like you can, because you got a cool name, but everybody else can't. I'm always jealous of people like you because you got amazing names. You can put it in. But like, I've spoken to a guy this morning called Steve Worthy, and I was like, I just love your name. That's not fair.
Yeah.
But you know, he said, he was like, you know, and this has been a branding. He was like, I think you're gonna hinder yourself. He said, because at the time I'm making shorts, and he said, if someone is interested, if someone's interested in podcasting and you've done a short about podcasting or a video about podcasting and your channel is called the Podcast Creators Hub, they're going to click on it because they're interested in podcasting. He said, so making it like a lower barrier to entry is really simple. And he said, none of them are talking about this. He said, someone's got to really go, do I care about who Ash Borland is enough to click on it? And so that was something that, as a personal brand guy, which had built my business on it, I was like, but he was right. And so, but the problem with that then meant I had many niches that I worked in. So I had to look, and I said, I'm a mortgage broker. Originally, I work with mortgage brokers in that space. I split it. I've set up a podcast for that, and I've set up I've got two like things: podcasting and then mortgage consulting. They're very separate, and it's been happening over the last few weeks, and it's seen tremendous results. And the reality is, like crazy better than I ever would have expected. And the joke of that is, once I got out of my way and stopped trying to make it all about me, and stop trying to be like, do you know who I am? Ash Borland here, the guy that makes more content than you can possibly imagine. And that was what I was trying to be. I was trying to be Gary Vee. I was trying to be this guy that, like, I want to, you to come on the show and be like, well, I make 7 videos a day. How many, and the reality is, instead of going, okay, who's my target audience? Okay, they're here. So let's make content that they love. And then they're here. Now the branding is the same. That's, of course, so the colors are the same, the fonts are the same, because I'm a brand guy and I like, so it's cohesive. You'll be able to know it's the same guy if you look. But I think I think it's very important for people, because I see a lot of people doing this, because I was the world's worst. I mean, literally up until like a couple of months ago, trying to make everything fit into one place. And actually, by serving everybody, you serve nobody. So I do think you have to be quite, so even down to like thumbnails, I've removed my face from the thumbnails. I don't have that. I was from Nick again. I was like, who am I? I'm a nobody right now for podcasting on the YouTube. I'm a nobody. So no one's going to look and go, there's a bald guy. I better click. I mean, everybody on YouTube seems to be bald with a beard. So it kind of works. But like, I started thinking, okay, what would they want? What do they? And so that's helped. I mean, it's helped tremendously on YouTube, and it has helped on the other business as well. I think it's refreshing to see someone do it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It's quite long-winded, but
no, that's great. I feel like you just gave us like a mini crash course in personal branding too. I think that was fantastic, because I love to talk about branding and marketing and how everything can be cohesive, because that's what people will say to me. They're like, well, I have a podcast and now I want to start YouTube, but I don't know how to tie the two together. And I have to be really honest, like, you could look at both my podcast and my YouTube and say, oh, she talks about the same content. It's very, very different. And that's intentional, because, when Ash and I, we've talked behind the scenes about content creation and, kind of what that can look like. And for me, I put stuff on YouTube that's going to perform well. With a podcast, I create what my audience is asking me for. And I don't always make sure that everything's keyword specific and super like Google friendly on the podcast. I always do with YouTube. Always, always, always. So can you talk about anything that you've learned as far as your YouTube strategy that's been super helpful? I know you were talking about shorts. So let's hear your shorts experiment and how that's gone for you.
Well, first of all, just to echo what you're saying, I think, so when we spoke right at the beginning about like video podcasts, I think what you're doing is like the meta. I think that's the right thing to do. I think podcasters should be using YouTube to talk about keyword specific things to drive then to the podcast. I don't think it should be uploading. I think what you're doing is a glowing example of how it should be done. And so I love that, because YouTube is a search engine and it's not the same. And I think your podcast, whenever I've tried to make them match, your podcast suffers because it doesn't sound very good, because it's got to be short and snappy and quick and this, and it shouldn't be. So, I was listening to your episode about your first experience of writing a book, and I was like, if you did this in a short episode, it would suck. But it was great. I got to hear everything. So again, it will keep changing my mind. I'm like, I need to do longer stuff. But with YouTube, shorts. So shorts is something that I was super excited about shorts when it first came out, because as a content marketing consultant, which is what I do, pretty much by day. And so it's my job to know, like, the way I feel it, is everything about every platform. And so I'm constantly hiring coaches and constantly to understand it. And so like TikTok came out. And the reason why I'm saying that is TikTok came out and I started a TikTok account, and in about 4 weeks, I grew it from 0 to 17,000. 17,000 followers. Started monetizing, got a couple of sponsorships on it. It was very small at the time, but I backed off because it was way too much work. But I was just kind of testing it out. And I also, you might find this, Crystal, but I was like, as doing content marketing, I was like, I've got to have some form of like credibility there. So if someone says, can you do it? I'm like, yeah, I've done it. I can show you how to do it again. But I just didn't really like the platform. I thought it was very, very young. I thought that the audience, there was no search, which really would I'm very like kind of purist on that. I think it needs to have search, because otherwise you're not getting what you want. You're getting what they think you want. So, but YouTube Shorts then came out, and I was very excited about that because I was like, oh my gosh, this could be a game changer. But then everybody was like, no one was doing it, and everyone was being like, I couldn't get my head around it for ages. I've slept on Shorts for a while because every time I did one, they do well. And then I was in this YouTube community, and they were like, well, no, don't do Shorts. It's not a good idea. It's going to damage your channel. It's not very good. It doesn't help with this. You're going to all of it's rubbish, by the way. And I'll explain why, because what these people, and I listen to them. They're friends of mine. They're amazing. But I was listening to them. And I was like, yeah. And then I got Rob Wilson from vidIQ, and he came on the show, and he said something. I said, should you be doing Shorts? And he said, Ash, asking should you be doing Shorts is like saying to me, Rob, should I upload a YouTube video in 2014? He said, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard people say. And so I was like, okay. And then he said it off there. I said, I've got to ask you about this. And he said, Ash, the problem is no one understands it. And the YouTube gurus have built their brands on knowing everything about YouTube, and they don't know how this works because it's not the same game. So he said, so they're all shying away, which is why there's no content on it. So I waited, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to just do it. I'm going to be the guy then. Fine, I'll try it out. And I know with TikTok, I was like, it's got to be the same as TikTok. TikTok, you've got to upload 3 to 10 videos per day to spike the algorithm. I paid a lot of money to a guy to find that out. And so you're one of those where you know, so everyone was doing one. And that's what Rob Wilson was saying. He said, they're doing one a week to support their channel. He said, it's not enough. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to commit. Everything else is sucking right now anyway. So what else have I got to lose? And apart from the podcast doing okay, but other than that, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did 5 a day for 30 days. And my channel, I think at the time, had like 100 subscribers. It was this channel that was just nothing. And it did well. I mean, like I gained about 130 subscribers in the month, and I did about 60,000 views. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I upped it again. I did it again. And in 2 months, it's gone from like 100 subscribers to like 765 subscribers. I think I've got about 150. I can't remember. It's quite a lot, multiple thousands of hundreds of thousands of views. But I've signed like brand deals and stuff, and it's literally been 2 months. So the honest truth is, there's gold in those streets. You know, people are they're sleeping on it. And as a podcaster, my podcast downloads have gone through the roof because it's like helped, because people are going, I'm just talking about podcasting. And now what I haven't done is I haven't fancy edited it. I spoke to a couple of friends and said, you know, should I be doing like TikTok content? And they're like, no, you're a podcaster. So if you're going to talk about podcasting, be in your studio, do like a 1-minute micro podcast, and easy. It's very easy to do. It's been very successful. And I think, you know, no one else should do it because then I'll lose out. But yeah, I think if you're looking to make YouTube work, it's the best place. I was chatting to someone before. I think it's amazing for podcasting because I think that you can have uber short and uber long is becoming this kind of new way that we consume content. So I would say definitely do it.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I will see, and I'm curious to know, is what you upload on Instagram, is that your shorts or is it totally separate?
No, it's my shorts. I don't really use Instagram. I just use I use Instagram to connect with people like you guys so I can just see what you guys are up to and chat. Like I use it for that. But I do upload 1 a day because I've got like 500 of the things in a file. So I'm like,
yeah,
okay. And I have them. I do upload 1 a day to there, but that's all that is. That short is the short. Like it's not
Okay.
I mean, I get a lot of hate. You know, it's not a good day if I wake up and someone tells me to die. That's amazing. But other than that,
Well, I think it's the reason why I ask is because that's where I see them. Because as a consumer, so this is a little bit like into my mindset of how I learn about marketing and I decide whether I want to try something new in marketing is how do I consume it? And I don't typically think I'm going to go to YouTube to watch shorts. I go to YouTube intentionally to get an answer to something or to look for a video that I know is there on someone's specific channel. So I'm not there as the consumer of a short, but I'll get on Instagram and I see your reels that come up and I'm like, oh, look, there's Ash again. I don't even know what it's about, but I'll see, he's got another podcast tip. So the personal branding is there because like you said, I see you're in your studio, you have your mic in front of you. Most of the time you have on your headphones and you have like, it's the same, branding colors and fonts, like you said. So it's very quick to, even if I don't watch the whole thing,
you shouldn't watch it at all.
I know.
I don't want you to watch it.
I just know. I'm like, oh, Ash is putting out another one. He's doing another one. So whether or not this is your intention, in my mind, the branding behind it is he's putting out new content. He's putting out new content. I should go check out his content. There's these little subtle triggers that happen in people's like marketing brain where they're seeing something and it's like, oh, hey, I should actually go check it out and see what they're doing. And I think that that's like personal branding 101 is you're being in front of people consistently enough to where it makes them curious.
100%.
Like, oh, what's he up to? What's he up to? I want to go see like what's he's doing, what he's doing over there.
And that's all it is. That's why I upload it there. And you said about, you know, people make me laugh with this because they say, you know, I think they get offended. They think they're going to offend me when they say, I haven't watched it. And I'm like, I don't want you to watch it. That's not why I've made it. I've made it so you've seen it. That's it. I couldn't really. And that was why I said people don't over edit on these shorts because they're not designed to be, they're designed for visual awareness. And, so that, well, you know, like, but that's the reason why. Now, the other reason, just to go with the shorts, because you said like how you consume it. This is the thing that changed my mind on it was because I was like, I'm not sure, but I did 1 month and 49% of my traffic from shorts came from search. And that was when I was like, no, I'm full in now. Like, this is the thing. And I'll tell you why, and that's why, just because you said, you could go to YouTube to consume a specific thing. 49% of that traffic in that first month, of which there was like hundreds, well, tens of thousands of views. I can't remember the exact amount because they do it 28 days and it's gone. It was, it was search. And that to me, then my content marketing SEO brain, I was like, wait a minute. If this is search, and this is how it changed. And I said this is search. That means that this is being served up in people's like actual when they're looking for something or browse, but, you know, mostly search. And I was thinking, okay, so what that means that if I answer a specific question that is searchable and I can do it in less than a minute, and it's not a sexy question that people want to know the answer to, all I'm waiting on now is consumer behavior to shift to start to actually watch shorts, which, let's be honest, whether you're a purist or not, 100 million %, the world is moving to consume content on a vertical platform. And if I've got a video, and this is going to, like, say, for example, because in YouTube, you're like, I look at your content and love it. But if I've got a video that's 50 seconds talking about why solo podcasts are a good idea, and you've got one that's 6 minutes, then the lazy person is going to go, they're going to go, I'm going to click on that. And so maybe not now, but in 2, 5, 10 years time, they might. And so I started, what I did then, I went to Answer the Public because I know all of this. I went to Answer the Public, I went on SEMrush, and I got lists of hundreds. I mean, I printed off podcasting, video podcasting, like every single live podcasting, podcaster, and I just have this list. And I went down the list. That was those videos I just did like hundreds. I just literally went, you know, they're crazy ones. It was like, you know, can you upload a podcast to iTunes? Yes, you can. Funny, that's a great answer. But yes, you can. And I was like, doing one, then the next one. And people, you know, that's what it was for. And all I was looking at was like, I can get to a point over if I do 5 a day over a 5-year period, there can't be a question in podcasting that I could not have answered. And so that was where you're going to see Crystal doing loads of shorts now. But it's one of those things. That was where, because if it was the TikTok world, I was like, I don't want to be in that. But the search bit changed the game, because I was like, you could get to the point where every single content is there and it's answers the question. So that's an interesting play with shorts right now.
No, this is so good to hear your mindset, because that is like we had our conversation when I was on Ash's podcast. Like, we did our interview, and then shortly after that, that's when I would see on Instagram, I was like, man, he is cranking out this content. Like, I've got to ask him like what it is. So hearing what you said and thinking about the search, holy moly, that's a game. It is a game changer, because it's totally different. And I also think about and I don't know if you're this type of consumer as well, but if I stumble upon you, right? I hear Ash, he's on the Profit Podcast, and I want to go like, well, who is this guy? What is he all about? Even if you have several thousands of subscribers on YouTube, but you have like 2 videos, I'm like, does he really know what he's talking about? But if I go and I see, holy crap, this guy has like 5,000 videos, of all these, but he's answering all my questions. It's not just random, like a vlog here and like a random thing here. Like, he is literally answering my question every single time, or the important things I want to know about. Like, it's a game changer.
Well, like watch time hours, just to give you a statistic here, watch time hours for this last 28-day period, just put up there, is 453.8 hours. They are less than 1 minute. Wow. They are less than 1 minute. And I mean, my channel, and I know I have a repeat viewership of 4,500 roughly, but I only have like 750 subscribers. But these repeat views, they're like consuming it like quick. And I had another kind of epiphany with this short content, because today I did a podcast. It launched, as in I did the podcast, launched on Monday, and it got into the charts here in the UK. And I was like, oh, great. I'll talk about what I did and how I did it and how I launched it and stuff. And the video is about 8 minutes long. And this is like one of those weird, I'm always trying to think, what would the consumer do? But I wasn't. And I thought, oh, I'm going to show my wife this video. And then I went, but she'll never watch it because it's 7 minutes long, and she's got to go and look after like the baby. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I've just said that, like, which means that means that other people are going to be the same. And I thought, and I think we sometimes get a bit indulgent of our own content length, especially as podcasters, because we have their attention. But on YouTube, you're just a click away. If I've got a podcast video and I'm lucky enough to get a viewer, there is 100% guarantee that your video is going to be there in the sidebar. Yours or Pod Sound School or someone like that, all these great guys out there, and it's going to be there. And if I just lose their attention for 1 second, they're going to go to you. And so I think there's something that the short content, they don't have enough time to. It's done and over with.
This is so good. Like, I feel like you just gave everybody a mini lesson. So we got a personal branding lesson. Now we're getting a shorts lesson. Like, this is so good. And I feel like knowing that you're also a consumer behavior nerd, like, we're going to have you back on the show to talk about this, because it makes me so happy. I love to talk about all the branding, the marketing, and all the things, because I tell people, you just got to be self-aware of, like you said, like, what you and your wife do. Like, I'll ask my husband, like, what does he do? Like, what do you think about this? He likes to listen to the articles. This is really interesting. So on the iPhone, like on, it's like the news articles. Yeah. I was like, do you listen to podcasts a lot? I was asking him the other day, and he was like, not really, but I like to listen to these articles. So it's like Wall Street Journal, and it's just the audio version. I'm like, babe, that's a podcast. Like, it's a short podcast, but it's basically a podcast. And he was like, no, it's not the same thing. It's not the same. I'm like, okay, but it's good to understand not only what you do as a consumer, but what other people are doing, because like you said, you can see the future of, we don't have time for that. I don't have time to watch a 30-minute video. I don't have time for this. I like give it to me straight, give it to me short. And
I think it's hyper long or hyper short. And that's, sorry, I'm just sorry, but it's the hyper long and hyper short. I think my wife said this to me again today, we're just going to the shops, and she said, it needs to be short enough that I can get what I need to know as soon as possible, or long enough, she said, that I can, do the dishes or go for a run, or like if I'm listening, but if I'm watching, do the dishes, or I can do, she said, it needs to be like TV show length. She said, because if I've got to pick another video halfway through, it's about 10, 15 minutes. She said, I'm just like, and I see that time, like you see these super long 1 hour, 2 hour videos doing very well on YouTube, accompanied by, but you don't, I think you have to get people in with short and then onboard them to the, and I think that's where it's going to go as time goes on.
This is so good. Oh man,
sorry,
we're just going to have you back on the show. No, we're going to have you back on the show. This is so good, because we're going to move into our rapid fire questions. So are you up for some rapid fire questions,
Let's do it.
Ash?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one is, what piece of advice would you give to a brand new podcaster?
Start. Oh no, I wouldn't actually. What advice I would give is make sure that you do your market research on the audience and the idea, and make sure that your format, your concept and format is like solid before you even think about starting, because otherwise it'll just be another Joe Rogan wannabe show.
I love that. Okay. My next one is a two-part question. So, what is the dream podcast you would love to be on? And who is a dream podcast guest that you would love to interview?
Yeah. So first one will be Gary Vaynerchuk. I know everyone says that, but there's a reason. I want to be on Gary Vaynerchuk's show. Don't want to interview him. I want to be on his show because I want to be the guy that was crazy enough to make as much content as he said, but didn't have the team behind him to do it, because I have zero person working for me because of that reason. Like, I want to it's just systems and processes and automation. And if it can't be done by me, then it's not getting done. So I want to be on his show to be like, to everyone who says it's not possible, it's absolutely possible. That's that one. Guest I would love to have on the show. Actually, I'd love Pat Flynn. And I can't get him, but I know I've had his best mate on. I've had that, but I would love to have Pat Flynn because I just think he's an awesome guy. And I think he would be the type of guest that I just think he's really great and interesting and funny and a pioneer in this space. So he would be my number one guest.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. And my last question is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
No. No, I'm definitely not a perfectionist. I'm the far from it, like the other way. I have to force myself to look at detail in content because I'd rather do quantity over quality. But I think I have the opposite end of it. I'll go, yeah, throw it out. So no.
This is so interesting. And you've mentioned Gary Vee several times. And I have to tell you that that's kind of the approach that I have as well, is the Gary Vee approach of like, hey, you know what? If it's going to be a crap piece of content, it's okay, because I'm going to have 10 more that are going to replace it pretty soon. And the people that need to see that content will. And then everybody else that says this is crap, then, hey, more power to you. Bye.
I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that your YouTube content's crap, but I love your YouTube content. But like, your Q&As and stuff, I think it's brilliant. I think people overcomplicate. If the message is done, then get it out there. I think the problem, I remember Roberto Blake, I absolutely love Roberto's content, and he said something about this idea that, it's absolutely great if you focus on quality, but my 700 videos and your 3 really great ones, my 700 is probably going to be better than your 3 really great because I've had way more cracks at bat. I'm better. I'm skilled. I'm faster. It's just, I think quality over quantity is a lie we tell ourselves to make ourselves sleep better at night. But the reality is the people who make it, they early quantity will bring quality, and that's what no one seems to want to talk about. So yeah, I love, and that's why I love your content, because I find it everywhere. So I think it's good.
Well, thank you so much, Ash. This is so much fun. You're just going to have to come back. We're going to have maybe do a live stream.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we'll have to do. We'll have to do a live stream where everybody can ask questions and do something. But where can everybody find you? Tell us all the places where people can connect with you.
Yeah, best place to go is for content and stuff. Best place to go is YouTube, which is Podcast Creators Hub. You can go to. It's not really set up yet properly yet. So, but yeah, that's probably the best place. You can also get me at Podcast Creators Hub on Instagram. And my podcast is called Podcast Creators Hub. There is a mortgage one and all that other stuff, but trust me, you guys will not want to listen to that. So, so yeah, everything is Podcast Creators Hub, and you'll find it there.
Perfect. So everybody, we're going to have links to everything in the show notes. Make sure that you go check it out. Ash, thank you so much for coming on the show today, adding your wisdom and just for doing the things that you're doing, because you are someone that very much exemplifies not just saying, hey, you should go do this, but you're actually doing it. And I really appreciate that. So thanks for being on the show today. I told you were going to love this conversation. It was so good. And I feel like it has just been such a joy to work with Ash in several different ways. I mean, since we've recorded this podcast, we've gone on to do another episode that's going to be airing on his YouTube channel. And I'm just really excited to, again, find someone that is just as passionate about helping other people, because that's what it's really about. I mean, yes, we're both obsessed with podcasting, but we are so passionate about helping other people understand how marketing works and how you can use your voice to share a special message that could change someone's life. I know, like this is the real deep stuff that we often don't talk about, but behind the scenes, I really want you to understand that marketing isn't just about selling something or promoting what you're working on your podcast. Marketing is about changing someone's mind. It's getting them to pull out their phone and make a decision to listen to your podcast instead of opening up Instagram or checking their email or doing whatever it is that they're doing. They are opting in to the message that you are sharing. And that's a really cool thing. And I know I'm not going to geek out on podcasting or marketing anymore today because I want you to go follow Ash on YouTube. I want you to go check out what he's doing on Instagram. If you have been wondering how to use YouTube Shorts or how Instagram Reels can really help you, he's doing a fantastic job in how he's promoting really short clips about podcasting, and they're always super helpful. I have found myself saying, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." And we geek out behind the scenes. I'm like, tell me your strategy on creating these reels and doing really cool things with shorts. So go follow what he's doing because I'm learning from him and we can absolutely band together to help other podcasters in this community. So go to the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 315 to connect with Ash on YouTube and Instagram and all the places that you can follow him. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, "Send Crystal a text message." And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, "Send Crystal a text message." And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.